In this video, I'm going to cover how to intercept a save action from InDesign's PXM connector to Sitecore PXM, um, inserting some functionality to support workflow-controlled Sitecore content items when they're saved back from InDesign. So I've got an InDesign or a PXM project open here, just a very simple project with some simple content items fields flowed in, and in the code behind what I have is a save, an item saving event handler that intercepts that save request and basically checks to see if the current content item is in a final workflow state, and if it is, creates a new version, makes the edits to that new version, and cancels the original save, which disallows it from making the change to the previous version in its final workflow state. So let's take a look at how that works. So we've got InDesign here. Let's say Patrick just got an upgrade, promotion. He is now Solution Architect 2. Fancy Patrick. And I'm going to save that item back to Sitecore, make sure I save the content. It'll go through my item saving event handler, and then if I look in Sitecore here, you'll see this was before. Obviously I haven't refreshed yet. This is beforehand. It's version number 1, and it's in a final workflow state of approved here, and still says Solution Architect. And then if I refresh here, you'll see that the Solution Architect 2 was posted, and that it created a new version, and that new version is not in a final workflow state, so it will not show up when it gets published. And if I go and look at the workflow state, you'll see that it's now in draft. So that's this save, or the item saving event handler, is basically how you support that option. So looking at that event handler in a little more detail, basically it does a handful of checks to try to short circuit for situations that we shouldn't be intercepting. So it makes sure that it's in the Print Studio site, meaning that it's basically an interaction that's coming from something Print Studio related, not a Sitecore shell interaction or content UI. We make sure that this isn't one of the ones that we're already processing. More on that in a second. We get the updated item and the original item, and then we check to see if the original item is controlled by workflow, and if so, if it's in a final workflow state. And if all of those checks succeed, then we compare and get the differences, omitting any standard fields. So we don't track those changes, because as you see down here, I'm just getting that default base template and making sure that it's not a standard field. We don't track the standard field changes, because those are usually things like the updated date, the person who was updating it, the revision ID, that kind of stuff, and those things will automatically be added when we create our new version, so we don't need to track them here. So we get the differences in the custom fields. If there are any differences, then we go ahead and add a new version, make our changes to the new version, save the new version and the original version, and then we cancel the original save to prevent it from editing the final workflow state item, or the final workflow state version, which is the previous version. And then the only other thing that we do here is we maintain a static list of item IDs that we're currently in the process of updating using this sort of workflow enabled version. And the reason why we do that is this item saving event handler method will get called every time any item is saved, including as I'm creating these new versions. And so I don't want it to go through this process and incur an infinite recursion. And so we just track which ones we're working on right now, and up here we short circuit this process, skip right over it, and allow it to just save normally if it's one that we're already working on. And then of course at the end we just make sure to remove it, so that any future saves of this content item are not ignored, or rather don't go straight through. And then one of the other things to note here is if it is in workflow but it's in a draft state, it will not it will also not process it, or sorry, it will not do this extra processing. It will still just save normally because of course we don't need to add a new version or track any differences or anything like that. We're just going to make the change directly to the draft state.